Okay, Nick. So I have a friend who I text all the time when one of our husbands gets sick. And sometimes we don't say very nice things because we feel like dudes get a cold and it's the end of the world. We get sick and we just suck it up and deal. How are you when you get sick?
I'm a whiny little baby.
You're a whiny bitch, just like they are.
I want my wife to help take care of me, and she does. She's fantastic. I try to return that. Don't get me wrong. When she's sick, and she's sick right now as we record this, she came down with something today. So I'd like to think that I return the favor and bring her food and take over primary child care stuff and all that. But she would probably be a better judge of whether I actually achieved that goal. But yeah, I'm a little complainer.
I think that you would probably be good at taking care of Marissa. I can see you being very nurturing in that situation. You were just sick too.
Yeah, like I'm on the tail end of something I've had for 3 weeks. And like last night was the first night after 8 p.m. that I didn't want to go to bed. Like I normally stay up till about midnight, right? So I've been having to go to sleep around like 8 p.m., 8:30. Just I'm so tired. I like put my son to bed, and part of his bedtime routine is laying in bed with him and reading him a book and then telling him a bedtime story. And I've been falling asleep in bed with him, and that's pretty rare. And I'm sure he doesn't care for that.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
how
now
about you?
does she have what you had?
No idea. She
Okay.
just cold symptoms,
Yeah.
general
It's
cold
just
symptoms.
February in the Northwest. So I've had two babies, C-sections too, which is hard. And Bill has had to like obviously help me after that and be a dad and do all that stuff. And it was all right. I thought after I had the second kid, it was a really rough couple days in the hospital. But I also just dealt with endometriosis for 7 years, which is it's kind of hard because you don't look visibly ill, but you're in excruciating pain, especially the last couple of years. And Bill knew that. And he was great when I said, I can't even stand up right now. I have to go get in the bathtub. I had to take baths all the time, several baths a day,
Wow.
sometimes when I was in pain. And it would be like the middle of the night and I'd get in the bathtub and he'd come in and be like, whoa, do I need to take you to the ER? Because I would be in the bathtub, like crying. And I'm like, no, they're not going to be able to do anything at the ER because they don't. And they tell you you're fine and that you need to get more sleep and become more hydrated and give you all this bullshit. Anyway, I finally found the right doctor after I think 14 opinions. And I had a surgery in December and everything seemed to have changed after that. And I'm not saying he didn't take care of me before that surgery, but once they went in and I had like a pathology report and he got a call from the surgeon who said, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. I think something changed because in the weeks after that surgery until my second surgery in January. So basically they went in December and said, we can't even finish this surgery. We need to do it at a hospital and we need to have another surgeon there who specializes in colorectal surgery. They called Bill. They said, we're going to abort the surgery, blah, blah, blah. It hit me a couple days later. I'm like, why is he acting so weird? I mean, he was sort of acting like I was dying. And I think it's because for the first time, he was like, holy shit. Like, this isn't like this mystery anymore. It's
Hmm.
it's it's concrete. Like we know what's wrong with you. And I don't know if and I haven't talked to him about it. I probably should instead of talking about it on a podcast, but I don't know if he's just like, oh man, I underestimated your pain. And then I had surgery in January and it was a pretty big surgery. It was like 6.5 hours. And I was in the hospital for a couple nights and he was great. He did everything. My mom was here. He didn't even let my mom do anything. He was very nurturing. And I just think the movie we're going to talk about today, I can't even imagine that. How many months was she in the hospital?
Yeah,
Weeks?
weeks,
She
I
was in the
think.
hospital for weeks. But I can't imagine being in the position where you're that sick or in that much pain and the person there, you're not married to them. You don't live with them. You're not in a serious relationship with them. You're so vulnerable. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah. And almost as worse for me as if my parents were the ones in charge.
Oh, absolutely. Well, even my mom coming here to help, I was like, Mom, go watch a movie with the kids. Bill's got it. The
Yeah.
first night I was in the hospital in January, they made me stand up because you're supposed to stand up as soon as you can, kind of try to walk around. And I was crying and I was like, I feel like I got shot in my abdomen. Like, this is the worst pain of my life. And I've had a compound fracture in my leg where my leg bent in half and I was in an ambulance and in a cast in the hospital for a long time. And I was like, this pain is worse. And it was just excruciating. And I was nauseated. So I was vomiting. And then when you vomit, the pain is worse. And Bill just looked like he'd seen a ghost. And he was just standing there going, what can I do? And the nurse said, you can't do anything. I'm giving her morphine. And he sat down and he said, once I felt a little better because of the drugs, he said, I am so glad your mom's not here. Because she would have absolutely lost her shit. She would have been in the hallway screaming for the nurses. And he was totally chill about it, which is great. That's exactly what I needed at that point.
Just like a calming presence. You're going to be okay.
It was perfect. And I was fine. I'm making it seem like horrible. I mean, it was a lot of pain, but as soon as they gave me that morphine, I was fine. But I was so thankful that like he was there. No one else was there. I didn't have to act a certain way. I didn't have to do anything. Like I just was there and he took care of me. And my mom would have, well, you know how moms are, you know how ladies are.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so how is your body now? How are you doing since the surgery?
I'm doing great. I have zero pain. I don't want to jinx it because sometimes endometriosis comes back, but I think I'm cured, totally cured. I haven't felt this way in years and years and years. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, I have no pain. This is amazing.
That's great. And I bet your sense of moral righteousness is, in a great place too, because you were right all those times that they told you were wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to get on that high horse. But I also think when I do, like it helps other women because they're like, oh my God, you found someone and he believed you. Because until the second they put me under, I was doubting myself because with endometriosis, it's really hard to diagnose and doctors don't know a lot about it. So what's the easiest thing to do? Tell you they don't know or gaslight you if you call their knowledge into question, which people with endometriosis do because you spend hours and hours and hours researching. So it feels really good. I'm just trying to figure out what to do with my experience next because I feel like I should do something with it.
And your platform as a semi-public figure.
Yeah. So I'm working on some stuff right now.
Good. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to recap here. So you've given birth twice with C-sections. You've had a compound fracture. You've had endometriosis. I know you've also lost a tooth in a car accident, right? You got it knocked out or something.
That actually didn't hurt that much.
But I mean, it's pretty brutal injury.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I sprained my ankle a number of times and I had a cold recently. So I think we're pretty even.
And seriously. No, I mean, Bill's about to probably have surgery on his neck. And I'm like, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how tough you are.
Welcome to Film Swap, the podcast where we challenge each other to watch the films that we've let slip through the cracks or intentionally shoved into the cracks for some reason. My name is Nick Voll.
And I'm Angelica Thornton. And this week we're talking about The Big Sick.
This was fun.
Wait, we haven't even had sex again yet.
I'm just not that kind of girl. I only have sex once on the first date. I wonder who that could be.
I'm guessing it's a young, single Pakistani woman.
This is Zubeda.
Are you judging Pakistan's next top model?
You know how we have arranged marriage in my culture?
Oh my God, I'm so stupid.
Can you imagine a world in which we end up together?
I don't know. I'm looking for Emily Gardner. She was checked in tonight.
There's an infection. We put her in a medically induced coma.
Coma.
You should call her family.
Thank you, Kumail. We're gonna handle things from here.
I think I'm just gonna wait anyway.
You guys broke up. I'm not sure why you're here.
I'm just gonna stay for a second. I think I screwed up with your daughter.
Yeah, you did.
Let me give you some advice, Kumail. Love isn't easy. That's why they call it love.
The Big Sick, a 2017 American romantic comedy film directed by the state's own Michael Showalter, one of my favorites, and written by Emily V. Gordon and Kumail Nanjiani. It stars Nanjiani, Zoe Kazan, Holly Hunter, Ray Romano, Adil Akhtar, and Anupam Kher. Gordon and Nanjiani wrote the film based on their true life relationship with some fictionalization. It follows an interracial couple who must deal with cultural differences after Emily becomes ill. It came out in 2017. It was a very successful indie comedy. Cost $5 million to make. It grossed $56 million worldwide. It also netted Nanjiani and Gordon an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. It's excellent. And just to sort of recap the plot just a little more here, they meet each other. He's a stand-up comedian. She is a grad student. They start dating each other. He is also, meanwhile, being set up by his mother for traditional Pakistani arranged marriage, which he is not interested in, hides it from her. She goes into a coma. He has to be there for her, but they have broken up by this point, and he has to kind of interface with her parents and try to help guide her through the coma. It's a fascinating movie. It's funny. It's romantic. It has all the right emotional beats. Why had you not seen this movie so far?
I don't know. I don't remember why I haven't seen it. I know that I remember seeing the movie poster and sort of, I don't want to say I was turned off by the movie poster, but it was, and I don't want to admit that it influenced me that much, so I'm not sure it actually did, but it was sort of like very Big Bang Theory looking. It doesn't match the vibe of the film, in my opinion. And I'm not a fan of Big Bang Theory, so maybe that subconsciously I was like, I don't want to see that movie. But this is my jam. This is laughter through tears. These are the shows that I love so much these days. They really hit the spot for me. I texted Nick saying, I wish I could text you about this right now, but I'm going to save it for the podcast. I'm in love. I had a sex dream about Kumail the night I watched the movie. It wasn't that graphic, but I think I fell in love with him. I love this movie so much.
Yeah, I had a sex dream. I had a sex dream about Ray Romano, as I said in my text.
He was so good in this. Oh my God, he was so good.
Yeah, and that's one of the fascinating things about this movie. So you come in, you expect Holly Hunter to be fantastic as always. I don't think you necessarily coming into this movie expect Kumail Nanjiani and Ray Romano to have the depth that they had in this movie, because you've not seen them in these kinds of roles too often before this.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's in a ton of stuff, and I've seen him in Silicon Valley and a bunch of other things, but nothing he's done hit me like this. Like, he is so good and so funny. I love his sense of humor. He's so dry. His timing is perfect. I listened to him this morning, actually. I re-listened to him on the Conan podcast, and he is a lot like Conan O'Brien, and they talk a lot about that, just kind of growing up as dorks and just being like really hard workers, and they'll do anything and they'll work themselves to the bone to make their comedy perfect. And he and Emily Gordon did that here, obviously, because I thought that this was near perfect as a film.
Yeah, and one of the many things I think is cool about this movie is, like their story itself, which is sort of an unconventional romance, right? His mom's trying to set him up. You know, she's more of the classic American. This movie doesn't really follow a lot of the same beats as a regular romantic comedy.
Yeah.
In so many ways, not least of which is that it switches from being a romance about halfway through between Kumail Nanjiani and Emily. It becomes sort of a romance in a way between Kumail and her parents, trying to get to know each other and learn to love and respect one another. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. It's the unexpected in this film is what made it so great. I almost feel like there's no category that it would fall under. It's a love story, it's a romantic comedy, it's a drama, and it's so unexpected. And he did something relatively new. He talks about it a lot. He has talked about it a lot since the film. He portrayed a lax Muslim, which is refreshing, you know, a non-strict Muslim person. And I don't know how much of his parents was based on how his parents handled the arranged marriage stuff in real life. I know what happened with him and Emily was pretty close, only they were still dating. They just hadn't been dating that long. There was no breakup, so they changed that for the film. And he's talked a lot about growing up in Pakistan and just not being that into the religion and questioning it and everything. But I think his parents tried to do the arranged marriage thing with him before he met Emily too. I'm not sure if the mom and dad in the film were exactly that was his true story. If it was, it's pretty incredible that he ended up where he is today, and he's that successful, because that is crazy amount of pressure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And just so many obstacles to overcome too. Just learning English at age 10 or whenever they moved over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think though that, again, not growing up as a white American shapes how the film is.
Yeah.
It is just different. And I think it's really cool because you haven't seen this kind of representation of Pakistani American life before. At least I have not. Just the rhythms of it. And I think as someone coming from outside of that culture, you have an idea of what it is and how people are. And there's the formality, at least as represented in this movie, there's the formality of sort of these strict parents, but there's also playfulness and humanity. And it's not like a caricature of anyone, like how goofy his dad is. So you can see where he gets his sense of humor from. It's his dad, even if his dad won't quite admit it. You know what I mean? And that was interesting to me.
This struck a really good tone. And I am from a Greek family. My mom's from Greece, and she's got a big story about not marrying a Greek. And let me connect it to my big fat Greek wedding so people can understand. I feel like this was a much better version of what they were doing in my big fat Greek wedding, where the parents would bring the suitors over. And I'm not a huge fan of my big fat Greek wedding. I mean, there's some stuff in it I can relate to and I thought was funny, but I thought it was a little goofy, and super, super like stereotypes and just, the whole cliche. But this was so much more refined than that. But I get that life. In fact, sometimes I think to myself, whoa, I broke out of that. I mean, I'm not, it wasn't like arranged marriage thing for me and there was no pressure. My mom met my father when she was 18 years old in Athens, and she didn't speak English, and he just stepped off a Navy ship with his best friend from the US, who was my mom's first cousin. My mom didn't speak English. She met him. They started writing letters to each other. They dated for like a year. My mom has pictures like writing letters to him in English on her nightstand. She's like a kid. She's a teenager living at home with her parents. And my grandfather flipped out and was like, you are not leaving. You're not moving to America. You're not going to marry this guy. He's not Greek. So my father moved to Greece, learned how to speak Greek, learned how to write Greek, converted. They got married in a Greek church, did the whole thing. And then they moved here and got divorced.
American story.
Came here, had 2 kids, and got divorced. But my mom tells me, and I mean, she's kind of kidding, but not really. He was her ticket out of Greece. She basically latched on to the first nice guy she met and thought, oh, I'm going to move to America. That's where I can do whatever I want. And I can listen to the Rolling Stones without getting in trouble. She was not allowed to listen to the Rolling Stones. And she's still obsessed with the Rolling Stones, and she's 71. And so she married this guy, and they came here, and she left her family. And they didn't cut her off. Like Kumail's family threatened to cut him off, but it was sort of like that because it was the late 60s and she didn't see them again for a long time. And it's never the same again if you marry outside, the Greek culture. And so I'm always thinking, man, I could be living in a suburb of Athens, Greece, married to a Greek guy, doing all the things that Greek women are supposed to be doing right now. But my mom got out.
That's fascinating. You're a rich tapestry. I'm like white bread, and you're, some sort of Greek bread. I don't know. This is a bad analogy, but it's fascinating to me how complicated your family story is versus mine.
Yeah. And then my mom says things to me like, oh gosh, she makes me feel bad about moving to the other side of the country, to Oregon. And, she knows we had to come out here for jobs and everything else. And I'm like, well, you left Europe and you left with an American, and, you were way more ballsy than me. You took off to the other side of the world. And, when I was younger, she would say things like, oh, you marry a nice Greek boy. And I'm like, well, you didn't marry a nice Greek boy. Like, what are you doing here? So she, I think she still kind of longed for that cultural connection and that closeness you feel. I mean, it's like the Jews and the Italians. I mean, so many cultures do this where you lose something when you marry outside the culture.
Yeah, but what all these cultures have in common is a sort of patriarchal system where mom and dad, but they know best. They guide you.
Right.
And it's like
Yeah.
sort of like this worshiping of your elders in a strange sense where
Totally.
you're devoting your life to someone else in a way and not yourself. And so
Mhm.
there's pros and cons, I think. You know what I mean?
Oh, there's so many pros to my mom breaking the chain and taking off.
Mhm.
I'm so happy. I mean, I wouldn't have been born, obviously, but for her, even she had a great life here. And I don't think she would have ever been happy had she stayed there. My grandfather was really old school, even for the times. And at the time didn't really believe in educating girls.
Wow.
And so she was like, I'm out. She came and put herself through school and did all this stuff. As he got older and his kids had children, my grandfather was like, so proud of us. We're going to college. And he changed the way he thought. But when my mom was a kid, they were like, you're going to work in a factory. That's it.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, I got nothing to say. How do you follow that up, Angelica?
I
Damn
don't
it.
know. The Dakotas aren't like that.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my mom was the first person in our family to graduate college. I mean, but it's nothing like this. I mean, there's no arranged marriages and, other than the expectation you go to church, there's not,
Yeah.
a lot of similarities. But I think
Did they have strong opinions on who you dated or who you ended up with? Marissa.
my parents, no, not at
Yeah.
all. But see, Midwesterners are much different because Midwesterners don't talk about anything.
Yes.
So they didn't want to bring up love or sex, especially, or anything like that, because you don't talk about that sort of stuff ever. So I think it's its own set of problems. But I was thinking, sitting here listening to you and thinking about the movie, how even though the experiences described by you, but in the movie as well, described by the movie, do not remotely match my own, there's something sort of universal about it in that it's in its specificity. You can see the humanity of the characters because they're not glossing over. It's not just like big, dumb slapstick. It's actually understanding why they think what they think. And does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It allows
Yeah.
you to connect to them emotionally because they feel like real people, even if they're making jokes, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And you know that his parents love him and
Mhm.
that this is the way that they were raised and they sacrificed everything and came to the US and they want beautiful Pakistani grandchildren and this and that. And then that they end up loving him, even though they say they're cutting him off by giving him his favorite food and putting it in a Tupperware container and leaving it with him when he's about to leave for New York. So I thought that was really great. It was perfect. We didn't
Mhm.
need to know at the end of the movie what happens between Kumail and his parents, because obviously, text me when you get there, his dad said, and that was great.
Yeah. And then also the ending too. We don't need to know exactly what happens with him and Emily because she shows up at the show and maybe it's just a sweet goodbye, but maybe maybe she's moved there after grad school or whatever it is. We don't know. And I think that's a really nice way to end it too. I think the assumption is they get back together, but they don't have to spell it out because the movie isn't really about them ending up together. The movie is about, developing themselves as people in a way and overcoming her illness. I think we should talk a little bit about Holly Hunter and Ray Romano, because I think that they really injected a lot into the movie halfway through. And not that the movie was flagging or anything like that, but I think it's rare that you have something like this where there's like a second act. There's brand new characters in the second act that completely change the trajectory of the movie.
Yeah, I did not expect that. I didn't. I mean, she comes in. Holly Hunter is very aggressive with Kumail, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the story about how the parents hate him and blah blah blah. And then you kind of watch them fall in love with each other and connect with each other.
Mhm.
And while she's in the coma, at the same time, Emily disappeared for a good chunk of the film, right? But we still miss her as an audience member. I did. And I see that he misses her, and I believe that he loves her and he realizes he loves her, which is pretty incredible that they did such a good job of establishing that connection in such a short period of time. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Totally.
Like just the dates that they went on and just, them talking in bed. I was like, they really did that quickly. And then the rest of the movie is him and her parents.
Yeah, getting to know you. You mentioned this with Holly Hunter. She comes on so strong and unpleasant. But you see very quickly how that breaks down once, she realizes she doesn't have to be that way. So she's not a one-note character at all. In the beginning, she's just a protective mom. And then when she sees she can trust him, then those walls come down and she learns to love him. And similarly with Ray Romano, he starts off as like a sad, sack, dopey, kind of stereotypical dad, clueless dad guy. And then that all melts away as the movie goes on, and he admits to his infidelity to Kumail and just shows that he's a real person who's not dumb. It's just sort of like interesting how it breaks down this sort of typical sitcom or rom-com paradigm between moms and dads, where it's always the battle axe mom and the dopey dad. And it's funny because that's exactly what happened in Everybody Loves Raymond, right?
Yes,
Like,
Deborah and Ray. Yeah.
Deborah's so unlikable in that show.
I agree. I hate that so many shows, so many commercials, so many movies are about the dopey dad and the fed up wife who denies sex, and they're in this sexless relationship, and the woman thinks that's okay, and the man just begs for it all the time, but he's doing everything wrong, so he's never going to get it. It's like, are you kidding me? That is so toxic and unhealthy. And there's never any love. But look, we have Holly Hunter and Ray Romano here who have so much tension, and they did such a great job of acting through that. That was one of the best scenes in the movie when it's revealed that he cheated on her, or you think, he cheated on her, but you still feel so much affection and warmth between them. They clearly love each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's missing from the entire series of Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, the fact that these two people actually care about each other. The scene where she goes and cuddles up in his.
Oh, that was awesome.
It's a perfect scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't help but notice, though, when they're standing next to each other, how much taller he is than them. And so thinking about the act of sex between them is fascinating to me, because it's like, you remember like the Lord of the Rings when Frodo's riding on the shoulder of the Ent? That's kind of what I feel like it's like. He's on the shoulders of the giant tree, and that's what sex is like between them.
Nick, I haven't seen Lord of the Rings.
Oh, future podcast.
Yes, exactly. They were so good, and I don't know that anyone else would have been able to pull off, especially Holly Hunter's character. She's so good at playing that like manic, frantic person.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of does it in broadcast news a little bit, and she's just kind of, she's stressed out. Her daughter's in a coma. She might die. She's got to fight to get her in another hospital. What's the best thing to do? Oh yeah, I'm pissed off. My husband cheated on me, but I still love him, and I'm trying to like push it to the back of my brain. Oh yeah, and here's this dick that my daughter was complaining about, who left her even though she was in love with him because he has to marry a Pakistani woman that is she's so stressed out, and then she lets loose and has a glass of wine and starts pulling up old pictures, and I'm like, oh god, I love this movie so much.
Yeah, I totally. And the fact that it was important that they listened to him in the end when he urged them not to move her. It just sort of signified that he is one of them now. They take him seriously.
Yeah.
They listen to his advice, and they invite him to the party afterwards, and they advocate for him. I think that's just a really neat touch. You know what I mean? It kind of sells the whole, because otherwise there's no real conclusion to the parent Kumail love story, but that is the conclusion. They vouch for him with their daughter, and make him part of the family.
Is there anything that you didn't like about the film?
Not really. No, I can't think of anything that stood out as like dumb.
So my least favorite parts are when he's hanging out with his comedian friends, and they're giving each other shit for not being funny.
Mm-hmm.
I know that happens, and I know that's probably his experience, but it kind of felt like we're seeing the same thing over and over again every single time. It's the same, like 4 or 5 people in the scene. And I like A.D. Bryant, but I don't think she was that great in this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, I've heard a lot about what it's like to be a stand-up and that pressure, and how a lot of these comics are so serious in real life because they're just working. Mm-hmm. And it would have been great to see them a little more, I don't know, stressed out or serious. It was just like joke after joke after joke every time. And he was the serious one dealing with these complex issues. But it wasn't a huge issue. those were my least favorite parts where I was like, okay, let's move this along. Let's get back to the story here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd read, this is not my least favorite, but I'd read Kumail Nanjiani. They got a lot of criticism from Pakistani groups because the women he was set up with early in the film were not, were kind of ditzy or not interesting.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's obviously there was one woman whose name I
Yeah.
don't remember who was great. And I mean, my wife and I were looking at each other like, why is he still chasing Emily? This lady's great.
Yeah.
But that whole, you didn't need much of that to get the point of that. But these are really minor criticisms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overall.
Yeah.
One thing, back to the parents real quick, that has made me think about how much, now that I'm a parent, how hard stuff like this for me to watch, in that just imagining what I would do if I were in their shoes, were my child, and by the accounts, only child, like my son is my only child. If he were to go into a coma or get really sick, just how will you deal with that? I don't know if I could ever recover from him dying. You know what I mean? Or being so afraid because he's so sick. I don't know what I would do. And so sometimes movies like this are kind of hard to watch just because you just start thinking about that. And this is a little different because she was an adult, although I'm sure that feeling
Doesn't
never
matter.
changes.
Yeah.
I mean, for me though, when it's movies where a kid dies, a really little kid dies, I can't even watch it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of an interesting thing to me, how I've changed as a person since my son was born.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think about that all the time. I mean, you're just looking at your kids, you're like, oh, I love you so much. Like, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning if anything ever happened to you, and being a journalist, every time I have to tell one of those sad stories, I just, but then you think, well, you have to get out of bed in the morning because you've got your wife and you've got your other kid or your husband or whatever's going on in the world. And I know several people who've lost very young children to, illness or, crashes or whatever. And I always think of them like, you're a superhero. I don't know what it is in our instinct to just keep pushing forward, but I really do feel like I would just die, fall apart and die.
Yeah, that'd be it.
Yeah.
You move away. Just go start some new life, in Nepal or something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what you do. It's funny. This has been an extremely serious conversation about a movie that is actually quite funny.
I know. He's so funny. I love his sense of humor. He's great. I don't know much about Emily.
Emily Gordon, the real one?
Emily
or
Gordon,
Kazan?
the real one. The real Emily Gordon. I mean, she wrote this with him. She's obviously very talented, but I haven't seen, has she written other screenplays?
I don't know about screenplays, but I know she was a writer on the Carmichael Show, which was a good sitcom. That's why I was reading David Alan Grier was in this briefly. I think David Alan Grier is one of the funniest people alive. Like that guy cannot not make me laugh. And I guess he had a larger plot line in this that they had to cut for time because it's already clocking in at 2 hours. So I was wondering why his role was so small for somebody who's, kind of a big star, but they used to work together is what I'm getting at here. So I know that she wrote on the show, the Carmichael Show that he was on. So yeah, she's a professional writer, and I guess she didn't want to portray herself, which brings us to Zoe Kazan, who was fantastic. I thought just so lovable, but funny. And the scene where she has to poop at his house was hilarious.
It was so good. And I mean, who hasn't been in this position? Oh God, it was so real. And, he loves her even more after that. I love the fact that she's a grad student at the University of Chicago in the film too. She's smart. She's smart. And every line of dialogue she has is like, okay, this is a really good female character.
Yeah, exactly. She's and it's funny too. We've talked a few times about these twists and turns that the movie takes. Even that little stupid poop scene was a twist because she's acting so weird, and you're thinking in a stereotypical sitcom, this is now this is her crazy thing. Oh, this is the movie. Yeah, she's going to be a psycho, and he's going to have to figure it out how to deal with her or whatever. But no, it's something totally human. There's nothing wrong with her. She's a normal person.
Yeah,
and I really liked that. You know what I mean? It reminds me, we did 50 First Dates or whatever. Well, where the twist was so far fetched that she has something wrong with him that he has to try to fix, So you know, for a minute there, you're like, oh, that's what this is, and it isn't. So anyway, I think that's really cool how it's subverted over and over again all these rom-com expectations.
Did you know their real life story before you watched this? Did you know a lot about the film? Because I did not, and I'm glad I didn't.
I mean, I had read about the movie. I was obviously very familiar with him, so I was
Yeah.
really excited to see the movie, and so I read about it before I saw the movie, which is where I learned that. So yes, I guess yes.
So he's so funny. I love his comedy. You know, he went to Grinnell
In Iowa,
in Iowa.
yeah,
Do you know Colin Durant?
mm-hmm. Yeah, we're
So
friends.
I'm always, everyone I meet from Grinnell is sort of like that highly intellectual, smart, funny person. You know, just observational comedy. And as
Mhm.
soon as I saw that he went to Grinnell, I'm like, oh, okay, it all makes sense now. And I apparently Kumail didn't realize he was funny until he went to college. He says he wasn't that funny a kid. He was just kind of a dork. And I heard him talking on Conan, and he was describing, like, you know, he was a dorky kid and was really like studious, got really great grades because he felt like that was the only thing that he had going for him. And his parents were even like, hey, dude, chill out. You know, you're doing great. But he was like, study, study, study. And he says the one other thing that he thought he was good at was being able to maintain his balance, because kids would always try and push him over like you do. And he's like, and then I found comedy in college. So the balancing thing was put right on the back burner. And I thought, how many people do we know that are that funny and that gifted at comedy who don't even realize it until college? I think most people like that know they're funny when they're kids, right? You make your friends and your family laugh. But he said he was a serious person. Have you watched Welcome to Chippendales? I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, we watched it. It was pretty interesting. It definitely lost steam as it went, but there's really outstanding performances from Kumail Nanjiani. Again, talking about showing these sides we didn't see before. Well, this show was a straight up drama, and you see sides of him you didn't know he had before. I think it speaks to his versatility as a performer. He's great. And in that show also is Murray Bartlett, who's become one of my favorite actors as of late. Remember him from White Lotus season 1. He was the hotel manager. He's great in this show. So I'd recommend checking it out, but I wouldn't say it's going to win any awards. It is interesting, and the history is really interesting, and some great performances, especially from Kumail.
Have you started The Last of Us?
I just don't like apocalypse stuff. I don't like the end of the world.
Yeah.
I just find
I
shows
feel
that are
like
bleak,
I
just don't
do
like.
feel like if you like Murray Bartlett, you should watch it just through episode 3.
I've heard so many people talking about it, and I might do it just for that, because I like Nick Offerman as well. I just, like The Walking Dead left me cold, no pun intended. We watched the first 3 seasons because my wife was into it, and it was a hate watch for me. I don't like it. I don't like consuming entertainment and then feeling bad afterwards. And I always felt bad after I watched that. And there's a difference between a movie where like you feel like it's sad, but you get something out of it. And I just felt like that show was nihilism for nihilism's sake. And I don't enjoy that.
Yeah. You could actually watch the 3rd episode of The Last of Us and really not miss anything from the first 2 episodes, and then just watch it as if it's just a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just watch that episode just for the acting alone. They're so great. And it's like the zombies, the infected people are not really in that episode. It's just about them. Check it out. Yeah, it's really good.
Back to Kumail real quick. I am really disappointed though that since this movie has come out, we have not seen him in another really great comedy. He's been in some comedies, but I don't know if they've really captured what he's good at. He was in Stuber, which was really stupid, and he was with Issa Rae in The Lovebirds, which was okay. It wasn't great. Those two are so likable that it made it watchable, but it wasn't a great movie. So I hope.
Do you think it's intentional? Do you think he's trying to?
Well, I mean, like both of those were kind of broad comedies, and The Lovebirds was kind of a rom-com of sorts, like an action romantic love, So I don't know if it's intentional or not. I hope that he and Emily Gordon write another movie together.
Yeah, I was going to say, get to work. They need to do it to make it good.
Exactly, and kind of capture his voice and her voice.
Yeah.
So hopefully soon, maybe something. All they have to do is relive a horrific experience and then write about it. You know what I mean? Maybe they should get on a plane crash or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Experience some kind of loss and then tell us all about it. Okay. So I would definitely recommend this. I've already told like 3 or 4 people. Have you seen this? Watch it. It's 10 out of 10 for me.
As would I, obviously. I mean, I had you watch it. So
yeah.
100%.
And next week, we're going to continue Rom-Com month because we're still in February, and we are going to watch one of the 2 movies that I've ever walked out of the theater on. Failure to Launch. We've mentioned this before. I think it was like 2006, and I was with a group of people, and I thought, this sucks. And I just walked out, went to the bar, and had a drink across the street. So technically, I haven't watched the movie. I've watched part of it. I don't remember it at all. I just remember being pissed because I thought it was cheesy. So we're going to give it another shot, and I'm going to torture you.
And I've never seen it. I'm excited. As you mentioned, Sir Terrence Bradshaw has a supporting role, which is always a good sign for a film when Terry Bradshaw's in it. It's got what, Matthew McConaughey and
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Okay, so Terry Bradshaw playing a role next to Carrie Bradshaw. That's delightful.
Yeah, right. I don't even remember what his role was. I hope it's minor. I mean, it doesn't matter. I know I'm going to hate it, but we like to talk shit about bad movies, so this should be fun.
Yeah, crack open a bottle of wine or whatever it is you like, and
if we're watching Failure to Launch, I'm maybe White Zinfandel. I'll just go to the store and buy something really crappy.
My wife's aunt loves White Zinfandel.
Of course.
Whenever she visits, you got to like try to find a bottle. So you go to like Winco or something where they have the lower end stuff. And
yeah, my mom has a certain group of girlfriends, and when they come over, she'll say to me, "Oh no, valta piso, tainekala," which means put those away. They're too good. In other words, these friends drink like fish and they drink shitty wine. So please do not pull that bottle out. And she's like, just take out the White Zinfandel. They still sell it on the East Coast. They don't have great wine out there.
All right. Well, this is going to be fun. I look forward to, wouldn't it be crazy if I really liked it?
Never. You're never going to like this. I know you won't. I have too much faith in you, Nick.
Thank you. I appreciate that solidarity. Well, that'll be a lot of fun. And then, we've got we've sort of booked some fun guests or got some good guests on the horizon. So that's going to be a lot of fun in the coming couple of months. And I think we'll do another theme month here soon. It could be kind of fun. We got some good ideas. So
yeah. And if anyone else has ideas, or if you have thoughts about The Big Sick, or if you want to watch Failure to Launch with us, watch it and then listen to the podcast and see if you, agree with our assessments, go to our Facebook page. Film Swap Facebook page.
Just look it up, Film Swap. I think at this point that other Film Swap podcast has not got a Facebook page, so you'll find us. If you see Angelica's face, and to a lesser extent my face, you've got the right one. Go ahead and click on there and follow us. It'll be fun. It's it's slow going on the Facebook page so far. People have liked it, but we're not getting as many comments as I might like. So maybe we'll have to push it a little harder.
You see Nick, Voll and Angelica giving the thumbs up, and that's it.
Carl, click. Come on.
That's true. Carl, we love you.
Film Swap is produced and hosted by Angelica Thornton and Nick Voll. You can watch or listen on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Follow Angelica on Twitter at Angelica KATU and follow Nick at Nick Voll. Share your thoughts on the films we discussed there, and we might just read them on the show. Music by John Michael Farley and Nick Voll.